This is David.
This is Donald.
And this is Wrestling Memories. And we're going to cover something that recently came out in June, in just past month, June of 2021. WWE released 50 greatest tag teams. And most of us wrestling fans, whether it's modern, even modern, or old school, we found this list a joke, especially with the game number 1. Now, Donnie, you had a different point of view on the WWE's release of this.
To me, the release of this was basically about those that competed in the WWE at the time of the WWE, which is why who you would have thought would be the consensus number 1 pick is barely in the top 10. And why 2 other teams that you would think would be in the top 20 or top 10 themselves aren't even on the list at all, but we'll get to that as the list progresses.
When we get to number 1, it's amazing that I tried to research each of these teams as best I could. I couldn't get a total all of them. When we get to number 1 and why the WWE wrote I grabbed their description. I copied their description and went to go over what they think why this team. Maybe the team is a good team, but the team's name sucks. Sometimes a wrestler can be great, but don't have the right gimmick, don't have the right name, don't have the team. Something is wrong, but they are great wrestlers.
The one advantage the team that's listed at number 1 has is that they're been always in the WWE, hence why the ranking is higher for them. Some of the other teams had success in NWA, WCW,
yes,
ECW, and that's why you're not going to see them at the high point that they should be, because this wasn't that kind of a ranking.
I was amazed that majority of all the tag teams they were territorial or WWF successful, notable, legendary names are on this list, but where they're placed is in question. But even by those that run their own podcasts. They question where these teams were placed on a list.
And that's the only reason I've never been upset with this list, because I never saw this as a list of overall the greatest teams ever, just a list of WWE greatest teams.
Yeah.
And that's always the caveat I took into this. That's why I don't get nearly as upset with this list.
Now, I'm not sure how long we're going to talk about this, but there are 50 teams, and whether we talk about what we think of these teams, or we don't even know these teams, is going to be the problem. Now, going over at number 50, the Bushwhackers, who were formerly Luke Williams, Butch Miller, the Sheepherders, the New Zealand Sheepherders, who were territorial. They were very, they loved to have bloody tag team matches, especially with the Fantastics. And I most remember them, their Mid-South UWF feud with the Fantastics. That's how I most remember them.
Yeah.
They transferred to WWF and become this comical Bushwhackers. They kept their real names, but they used a very, honest-to-God, disgusting thing. On young fans, they would lick their fans' faces when they approached the ring, and they were raising their arms up and down. They became a really wacky, quote-unquote, wacky team. I can see why they were 50.
Yeah, which is what their gimmick was, but you can see why they weren't high up on the list.
They didn't turn out to do much, but how in a Royal Rumble they each went in one at a time and left quickly as they entered. Going number 49, Too Cool, Brian Christopher, Scotty Too Hotty, also and Scott Taylor. There was a comment. The Too Cool was a combination of either 2 or 3 of the particular wrestlers.
Yeah.
Brian Christopher, who was Jerry Lawler's son, Scotty Too Hotty, and Rikishi, who was also one of the Samoans.
Correct.
I think in the early 2000s, they were mostly a gimmick show-off team rather than a good tag team match.
I agree.
They're the way they are doing their dance moves. That's the only thing you remember about this team, and I can see why they're placed at 49.
Pretty much.
At 48, the Quebecers, Pierre. I'm sorry, I can't pronounce the last name. Pierre Ouellet or Alouette and Jacques Rougeau. Now this was a good tag team, and I'm surprised that they weren't not in the higher numbers.
I agree. I
thought former about at least 2 or 3 times tag team champions.
I thought they would at least be in the top 40.
Yeah, at top 20. At number 47, the Smoking Guns, Bart Gunn, Billy Gunn. I was impressed when I saw this team for the first time. They were at least twice tag team champions. Their gimmick was so being cowboys. I can see why they're placed at 47 being
They were more 90s version of like the Mulligans or what
Yes,
you saw from the Funk.
They were a different version of the Mulligans, a cowboy, but they were twice tag team champions. I liked the team way back when they did it, and it was I know Bart Gunn went on to win that Brawl for All, I believe. Billy Gunn, he became part of the New Age Outlaws, so they went on to more successful single careers in tag team, a tag team. Next comes 46. I wish they had a lot longer stretch as tag team champions or a longer time together. My friend, a close friend of mine, Tito Santana, and Rick Martel. Now, both had long established singles careers. Now, Rick Martel had a long tag team. He's been tag team champions with Larry Zbyszko and Tony Gurria. Tito Santana started his WWE career with tag team champions as a breakout with Ivan Putski. Now, you think that when Tito Santana and Rick Martel together, oh my God, this is going to make a great tag team.
But it didn't last long.
They had a great, and then they first started, it was a Saturday Night's Main Event, they promoted themselves as Strike First, Strike Hard, Strike Force. Great show up. And Tito Santana, he didn't like the song they came up with, Girls in Cars. The video didn't work, but the song, you take the lyrics out, the background music did work for them. They just didn't have. They had several matches in the Boston Gardens, Madison Square Gardens, in TV tapings, and they won the tag team titles from the Hart Foundation on October 27th, 1987.
Correct.
But the titles didn't last long. They had matches with the Islanders. I should have researched more of their matches because I did a lot of research when I ran a website for Tito Santana personally. I did a lot of match research for him. I do his career better than he did. But their title that ended just like Jim Neidhart complained about the title loss. The Hart Foundation title loss to Strike Force. It wasn't. It was just that day that it was taped. They just told you're gonna lose the title to Strike Force. And the same thing happened when they lost the titles at WrestleMania 4, March 27, 1988, in Atlantic City to Demolition. The same time they were told they were going to drop the belts to Demolition. There was no storyline to either of their win and their loss. And they only had barely 6 months together, and then they had a chase after Demolition. They did a brief chase after Demolition with the titles, but they didn't last long. You would think Tito Santana and Rick Martel both had good singles careers, both tag team careers. They would have lasted longer. It was unfortunate they didn't. Tito Santana he talked to Vince McMahon, he wanted to do a heel turn run, but instead they gave it to Rick Martel. Rick Martel had either personal or medical problems, but when he came back, he did the heel turn with Rick the Model Martel, which nobody liked. I didn't like it. Tito Santana then feuded with his own partner, something I have always said I never liked. But I can see why they play Strike Force because they didn't have much of a run.
That's why I didn't get upset with the ranking on him, unfortunately.
The Head Shrinkers at number 45. They they are formerly of WCW Samoa. If I'm not mistaken, the Samoan SWAT team. If I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
A lot of the Samoan wrestlers, they were great tag teams, they didn't. I think. I'm not sure they were tag team champions. WWF had so many tag team champions throughout the decades. It was hard to, figure out who was and who wasn't tag team champions. The Head Shrinkers, it was just a strange name for a change from the Samoan SWAT team, who was probably a WCW copyright. I think that was if I've got the team right. But it's a team that some teams only lasted a few months.
Yeah, this was one of the cases where I thought they should have been barely on the list and not ahead of actually Strike Force or Smoking Guns.
Yeah, I probably would have had Shrinkers around with 50 or 49. Yeah. There's been the next team. There's been a mixed match. They have been tag team champions and mixed match with other wrestlers. Kane and X-Pac at number 44. Now X-Pac has been he's part of D-Generation X. Kane has a tag team with his kayfabe brother The Undertaker.
Yeah.
These two are going to be probably mixed match with other teams, and now it was strange the way they took some of these teams and put them at different parts of this list. that they would be just like Strikeforce. Tito and Rick were former tag team partners. Kane and X-Pac had former tag team partners. It was so many different times.
It's one of those where I got them being on the list, but you can understand them being low because they had better partners over the years.
This next team was a 4-person team, and I didn't see them. Maybe they had a popular run at time they were together.
But they weren't popular as a team.
They were WWE's attempt at the Four Horsemen.
Yeah.
We're called Evolution. Triple H, Ric Flair, Batista, Randy Orton. Batista is big as muscular as to me. He was a modern day Billy Jack Haynes. But Randy Orton, I didn't care for him. I was not a fan of his. I was not a fan of his father, Bob Orton Jr. I don't want to disrespect these guys, but I was not a fan of Batista. Not a fan of Randy Orton. I was a very slow upcoming fan of Triple H at all. Ric Flair, of course, but Ric Flair, he was better off with the Four Horsemen. It was just a modern uptake, a remake of the Four Horsemen.
Yeah, my main problem with the list is that basically they never were tag teaming with each other. They were either individually wrestling or
all four together.
Or all four, or 3 of the 4, but they weren't really tag teaming that much, so I didn't really understand them being on this kind of list.
And the way they place these tag team numbers is...
So that one I would have actually not have had on the list at all.
Now we're going to come to some teams that some of them were great established tag teams and tag team champions, and some were not. Next one is... They were called M&M, Joey Mercury, Johnny Nitro. Never saw them.
I have. No, them I understand being on the list from the time frame. They're probably more famous for their manager / valet. But yeah, for the time frame, they definitely belong.
Who was their manager / valet?
I keep forgetting her name to save my life.
Wasn't Sunny.
No. I don't want to mess the name up, so I'm not going to say it.
But they should have been in a high. They should have been in a low in the 50 to 40 range.
Yeah, I agree.
Which they are, but they should have been farther in closer to the 50 range.
They weren't really a successful team that much. They were a long team, but they weren't a successful
team. Now, the next team, I just watched a shoot interview with them, and I was very impressed at how they came up in their training, the respect of other tag teams. But I wasn't a fan of them as a fan myself. The Nasty Boys, Jerry Sags, Brian Knobbs. When I was watching the shoot interview, Brian Knobbs was such a big mouth. He tried to talk. He was over talking. The time Jerry Sags was getting annoyed. Brian Knobbs was constantly talking. Brian Knobbs can talk good, but as a fan, I didn't see. Maybe it was me I didn't like the heel tag teams, and I didn't like I didn't like them. But now after watching the shoot interview, I do have respect for them. Ironically,
I think for the era you were more into Public Enemy than the Nasty Boys, and that's probably why they were somewhat eminent of the time. Not the same, but somewhat of the same. But this is one of those cases where they had more success out of the WWF, which is where they might have been higher on other people's lists because of that. But they didn't do as much in WWF. That's why they're as low as they are.
And they kept back on. They said they kept going back and forth between WCW, WWF, or working anywhere else. And they had injuries interfere with their career too. The next one I know them individually. I did not know they even tag team. They were called Rated RKO. Edge and Randy Orton. I was kind of a big fan of Edge. Edge as a single wrestler and tag teaming with Edge and Christian.
Oh yeah,
I'm not a fan of Randy Orton.
It's one of those deals where you're going to have tag champions that are going to be on multiple lists, and it's just a question of how long they were with their partners to being higher on the list. So I get them on the list, but they should not have been any higher.
Again, it's like someone said. Some of these wrestlers are going to probably maybe be multiple different.
Because they had runs with versus...
Randy Orton being in Evolution and Randy Orton is next. I find it unfair that more than one wrestler be in a team be multiple times in this list.
Because they had feuds with Kane and The Undertaker and Triple H and Shawn Michaels. That's why they ended up higher on this list, or on this list at all. So what do we got next?
Okay, two, I vaguely know one of them. Paul London, Brian Kendrick. I vaguely have heard of Paul London. I have never signed him.
I do remember them briefly on SmackDown as a tag team. but that's one of those cases where I so barely remember them that I admit having a problem with them being on the list because they basically only wrestled like a decade ago, and I barely know their names now.
Being at 39, and next is number 38, and it's the same situation. Called DIY Johnny Gargano and Tommaso Ciampa. Never heard of
Tommaso Clamp.
Never heard of
Ciampa.
Same simulation with her.
The reason David's not going to
NXT.
the reason David's not going to know this is NXT, and this is where I do agree that they actually should not be on this list because I argue this is a WWE list, not an NXT list. So I don't actually think this team should be on the list.
I know NXT is a televised farm team. It's the development the development section of WWE.
Correct.
But I never heard. I just never could get into NXT. You know, and we don't realize that NXT formed out of when WWE took over Extreme Championship Wrestling, ECW. They tried to make a remake of it, but then all of a sudden they changed ECW. We're going to change to NXT. Dusty Rhodes then created this development.
Yeah, they basically took over a Florida promotion and then ended up becoming NXT.
Yeah.
So what's next?
Okay, number 37. I do vaguely know the two of them. They actually called themselves this the world's greatest tag team.
Because they were undering of Kurt Angle during the highlight of his time.
Charlie Haas and Shelton Benjamin.
Yeah.
Now I knew Shelton Benjamin was Intercontinental Champion.
Yeah.
I watched him a little bit. Charlie Haas, I only know the name.
Yeah, they were fine as a team for their era, and that's why I get them being on the list. Again, this is one of those cases where I probably would have had them in the 40s because they just weren't on that long.
Now, the next team, okay. Money Inc. $1 Million Man Ted DiBiase. Oh, man, do I have to say it? IRS, Urban Architecture. Actually, his name is, of course, Mike Rotunda. I'm a huge fan of both. Ted DiBiase, Mike Rotunda, fantastic wrestlers. This tag team name sucked in my opinion. Mike Rotunda, you did not need the IRS gimmick. It's like Tito complained he didn't like El Matador. There are some guys who do not need an extra gimmick. This IRS gimmick outright sucked. It was horrible. With a great Syracuse amateur wrestler, Ted DiBiase and Mike Rotunda would I can see him a dominating team, but they had to make an extra somebody to follow or be part of Main Arm Man Ted DiBiase. He did have a great gimmick.
Right, and this was one of the cases where I get them being on the list, but I didn't actually see them as that much of a successful team, just a long duration team. So again, I would have had them in the 40s. I wouldn't have had them
I would have more respect for the team. I just couldn't tolerate Mike Rotunda's stupid IRS gimmick. Oh my God. I would have more respect for this team if it wasn't for that.
The next team on the list is probably there because they're the ones that stopped DX's first run of Michaels.
I know.
That's the only reason the next team is on this list.
I know both guys. I did not know. I said, is there some people on here that have teamed up? I didn't even know they teamed up.
Yeah.
But if they teamed up, fine.
We're talking about Jericho.
Jericho, Chris Jericho, Big Show. Now, Big Show, I had more respect for. I really enjoyed him in WCW as the Giant. Not with the stupid relationship, alleged relationship with Andre's son. No, that was dumb. But as a Giant, he was WCW's Andre the Giant. And I liked it. I really liked it. Now, Chris Jericho, okay, when he did his 1999 debut, Chris Jericho and all around, he's been around in all the companies, and he's a great wrestler. I got a great respect for him. But there's sometimes when they put together some people, it says, why?
It's like, I get their run in Famous Feuds, and that's why they're on the list, but again, it's one of those cases where I would have pushed them further back from the list. I wouldn't have had them that high up.
Next team, number 34. I actually like this. The Natural Disasters, Typhoon, and Earthquake. I like them both. I'm very much a big fan of Earthquake, especially when we went to the Philadelphia Spectrum's SummerSlam 90, Earthquake against Hulk Hogan. I had a big sign, Earthquake, finish him off. I really like the Earthquake gimmick. I really, really like John Tenta. I also like Typhoon and Tugboat. I did.
This is where I was actually kind of shocked they weren't more successful than they were.
And they were tag team champions. No, and they should. No, I can see the place in the list, but some of these teams did not have a long enough run.
Yeah, and that's why they're on the list because
where they're placed. Next team, I haven't a clue who they were. The Street Profits, Angelo Dawkins, Kenneth Crawford. Are they NXT?
No, this is WWE, but this is more of
recent?
Yeah. This is more of like the last few years, so that's why they're on the list. And so
this is a situation where
David's going to run into problems where he's not been into much of the current era, so he's not going to understand some of the teams.
I could say in the past 10, 15 years, honestly, I don't know who knew the tag team Intercontinental. I don't know. I stopped following so much. I don't know who the champions are.
Longevity wise, I get them being on the list, but it's one of those cases where they were never considered a top tier type of team, just like a holdover team. So again, I probably would have placed them much lower on the list.
To be above some of these other teams, natural disasters,
yeah,
nasty boys.
Yeah, I would not have had them on high on this list. So I understand the critique
now
on
the Briscoe Bros. Now, for an old school fan like me, you would think Jerry and Jack Briscoe, legendary NWA World Tag Team Champions. No, they were, if I'm not mistaken, the sons of Jerry and Jack Briscoe. If one of or both, they are actual the Briscoe brothers, and I didn't research but I knew they were in the independents and the WWE. I didn't research enough. I'm pretty sure that research they were the actual sons of Jack and Jerry Briscoe, or definitely related, not kayfabe, but related, actually related. So I could see where the placement, but I didn't get to see them much in any tape television whatsoever. Next one, okay. When they debuted.
Now this is
the WWE's version of Kevin Sullivan's Satanic Cult.
This I'm not. This one I'm fine with on the list on Luke Harper and
Eric Roman.
The Wyatt
Bray Wyatt's cult.
Right.
I really like these three guys because they very much related to a Kevin Sullivan group.
Because these two were actually more consistent as a tag team with each other. That's where my critique of Evolution being on the list came in, because they never really teamed with each other, where these two constantly teamed and was part of this.
And they appeared in my last years I ever watched wrestling at all, and they very much impressed me.
So I obviously have no issue with them being on the list, and it's actually about right where I would have them on the list.
Yeah.
30.
Yeah. Next, again, another team, another guy, a bunch of great respect to these guys, and they were put together team, I think. And I don't know if they were tag team champions or not. Owen Hart and the British Bulldog Davey Boy Smith. I don't know why Davey Boy Smith couldn't keep his name, but I guess it sounded better to make the British Bulldog.
Yeah, it sounded more tougher, so I get the concept. I'm not as fond of them because they just weren't tagged long enough. That's the only reason.
That's why these several podcasts are saying probably the first 50 from 50 to 30 whatnot are teams that didn't last long.
Right. So,
are apparently notable teams, but didn't last long. That's why they're first 50 half or so.
Which is why I would not have had them nearly high on this list. I get why they were on the list, but again, this is one of those bottom 10 type teams because of longevity issues.
At number 29, two guys.
It's weird. I can't stand either of them, but I agree with them on the list.
I did. Which ones?
Miz and Morrison is next.
The Miz and John Morrison.
Yeah.
I didn't care for either of them, especially the Miz.
I can't stand them. But
I didn't like the Miz's name.
I can't stand them, but they definitely do deserve to be on the list because they've pulled it off twice as a team in 2 different decades, and both times just
like AWE. It doesn't grab my attention. Your name doesn't grab my attention, so
It's one of those scenarios that they were so annoying they ticked people off, and that's where I get the appeal of them. So where are we going next?
Now number 28. Now half of them, half I very much I like Sheamus. Now Cesaro was I just barely got to know him, and he won the first Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal, and I found it disturbing and disappointing.
But I'm not
him.
Yeah, again, I'm not, because he is insanely strong, and he doesn't look like he's insanely strong.
And Sheamus, even with the Irish, the red hair, I really like it. I really liked his ring work.
But they have worked long enough that I do see them being on the list. In their case, I probably would have had them around 35. I wouldn't have had them as high up as they are. But I get, compared to some of the other teams, why they were placed where they are. So
at 27, Team Hell no.
Oh yeah.
Again, Kane teaming up with somebody else, Daniel Bryan. Now Daniel Bryan.
But this was more famous of
man.
This was more famous of one of King's pairings, so I understand this being on the list.
Daniel Bryan, I don't want to disrespect. He had probably a following similar to an Ultimate Warrior, that he got the fans' attention rather than ring work. It's my opinion.
Oh no. This is where I do disagree, because I have seen enough of his work. His ring work is actually insanely great. And yeah, he actually is a top 10 guy.
Now Daniel Bryan, I don't want to disrespect you compared to the Ultimate Warrior. No, it's just how you approach the ring and got everybody's attention. Your hands up in the air.
But it worked.
The yes following.
It's one of those.
You got a fan's attention.
It's one of those clashes of teams that should never work. Yet for some reason, people really were into it. So I get them on this list. So
okay,
next.
now we come to now we're getting to much better, respectable longevity teams. Number 26, Nikolai Volkov and the Iron Sheik.
Yeah.
Twice tag team champions. Oh my God, who doesn't respect Nikolai Volkov and Iron Sheik individually and tag team? Longevity single wrestlers.
Yeah.
And they're one is actually Lithuanian, one is actually Iron Sheik is Iranian. Sorry, Iranian. I couldn't remember the nationality. Both legitimate foreign wrestlers, and so I respect these guys so much because they're legitimate. They're not, I have to say it, faking their foreign background. There's so many guys out there like that when they sell a foreign background, they actually aren't. But these guys are legitimate.
This is one of those cases where I actually saw the reverse issue, where they should have been around 20 instead of in the mid-20s.
Yes.
So I think they were put too low on a spot here because they did have longevity and they were from a more classical era. So
they should have been at number 25, where this next one at 25, where Nikolai Volkov should have been at 25, and this team should have been at 26. Los Guerreros, Eddie Guerrero and Chavo Guerrero Jr.
And it worked. I'll give them credit.
Now, the whole Guerrero family, very much a lot of respect for territorial tag team. They have a whole family of the Guerreros: Gory Guerrero, Eddie Guerrero, Chavo Guerrero, Hector Guerrero. Now, okay, I gotta say this.
It's a team that should be on the list, but I don't think they should have been. I think they should have been probably in the 30. 31.
I know Eddie Guerrero. I could not see him as world heavyweight champion. I did not see it. I'm sorry, with the late Eddie Guerrero.
But as a
I've mentioned this on Facebook many times. He should have been. He could have every title there was. I did not see him world title material.
As a tag team on the list, it's like they had some longevity, but not enough to deserve being in the spot that they are, and they kept going in and out on feuding with each other. So I probably would have.
I don't know if Hector and Chavo. Now, I think Chavo Jr. would have been Chavo Guerrero's son.
Yeah.
I don't know if Chavo and Hector Guerrero, they were a long-time territorial team too. If they were in WWF, I don't know. I don't know if they were or not.
I don't remember them on the list, which is why they're not on this list.
Right.
So what do we got
next? At 24, the APA, Ron Simmons and Justin Bradshaw, if I'm not mistaken.
Before he became Layfield.
Honest to God, I think they were the WWF's answer before. I mean, I wouldn't say with the Masks of Demolition. It's size-wise, they had to look at the Road Warriors. Well, Justin Bradshaw and Ron Simmons.
APA is the Attitude Era, so basically,
Attitude Protective Agency.
Yeah, but they were a fun team that they were probably more famous for the stuff they did out of the ring than them as a tag team. So
they were always in the dressing room at a table playing cards or something.
This is a team where one of those cases where in-ring work, I probably would have put them at 40, but as a gimmick that got people's attention off the ring, they probably would be top 15. So I actually mix it together. I get them on the spot because of that. Okay. What do we got next?
At number 23, the Blackjacks, former tag team champions from the mid 1970s. Yeah. Blackjack Mulligan, Blackjack Lanza. I can definitely see them. Now I don't know how long they were tag team. But unbelievable respect around the world, and they were put as tag team champions in the mid 1970s, and I could depending on how long they were. I don't know. Again, I don't know how long they were tag team, but tag team champions, original title holders, put them higher on the list.
Yeah.